give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, and it's an exciting week for you because we're kicking off our donation week where we are raising some money to help continue the fight here in Kentucky. And let me tell you what, this is an important fight. And there was a story that recently broke that kind of ties into a little bit of why we need to go ahead and really raise up a conservative voice here in Kentucky, delivering conservative news that matters. So before I dig into it, if you want to give to what's going on, if you're like, look, I really like Andrew Cooperrider, or I really like Kentucky's Voice, I like other people on the program I want to hear from, I want to stay informed on what's going on here in Kentucky. More than just commentary, I actually want to find out things. I want to fund investigative journalism. And as I said, I'm going to tell you a story here in a minute about why this is so incredibly important. But you can partner with us by texting GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's GIVE to 502-571-0970. And maybe you don't trust phones, and I understand why you maybe don't trust phones. My phone lies to me all the time. Like, for an example, yesterday it said I only walked a mile. I know I walked more than that. I know I walked many more miles, but my phone lied to me. So maybe you don't trust your phone. Well, you can visit www.kyvoice.org. That is kyvoice.org, and make your pledges to go ahead and fund what we're doing here in Kentucky. I mean, a little background on me. I live about an hour and a half away from this studio, and I drive it sometimes multiple times a week. That's right, 3 hours just in one day to sit here and tell you about what's going on, because I believe so much in making sure that this information gets out there. I see what's happening in our voting systems. You see it too. I know you do. You sit there and wonder, how do these horrible people keep getting reelected? And it has to do with how people find their information. The average voter has a hard enough time paying attention to what's going on nationally, let alone what's going on right here in the state. And we can make a difference. This is about what kind of state are you going to leave your kids? What kind of state are you going to leave your grandkids? What's your lasting impact going to be on the future of this country and this specific state? As we all found out during COVID, this state right here has a lot more power than you think it does. They can shut you down. They can force you to wear a mask. They can, a governor can sit amongst his throne and throw down edicts that can control your life. And if we don't have an information apparatus getting out there to the people, what's really going on, or the kind of information that our establishment media refuses to get out there, well, this will continue. We'll continue to get horrible people in office, because they're the ones willing to do the bidding. They're the ones willing to bring in the money. The person who pays the piper controls the tune. And so if you don't want the tune you're hearing to be controlled by whatever interests there are that have an interest in getting into your pocket, whether that's companies trying to get tax handouts or other NGOs, nonprofits that want to reach into your pocket to fund whatever crazy beliefs they have, if you want to stand up to that, that's why you give with us right now. So you want to text 502-571-0970. 502-571-0970. Text GIVE, make a pledge. You can donate as little as $1 a day. Just $1 a day. I know you got $1. Come on. I know the economy's hard, but come on. $1 a day to make sure this information gets out there and to change the state into the future. So once again, that's text GIVE to 502-571-0970. 0970, 502-571-0970, or you can visit www.kyvoice.org. When we come back, I will tell you exactly why this is so incredibly important. A little story for you here. But we'll be back in a few short minutes. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooprider. If you like what I have to say, feel free to visit, check out the Andrew Cooprider Show right here on WGTK, Sundays at 6 p.m. Otherwise, we'll be back in a few short minutes.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And Andrew Cooprider here, your host for the day on Kentucky's Voice. Let me tell you why what we're doing here is so important. Let me tell you a little story. And if you want to help out what we're doing, if you want to help us out in going ahead and supporting the work that we're doing here, you can partner with us by texting GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Text the word GIVE. Visit www.kyvoice.org. We'll be doing Fundraiser all this week because we want to make some steps into ensuring that the people of Kentucky are properly informed. And let me tell you about more the establishment media here in Kentucky. So maybe you've seen that Andy Bashir's podcast was picked up by Sirius XM. Maybe you didn't know he had a podcast because, well, frankly, it doesn't actually get a lot of traction, a lot of listens. There are some people here in Kentucky talking about Kentucky politics. They're getting more views than he is. For an example, my show, when I post it online and post it to all my podcasting platforms, gets more views than the governor's podcast does. But yet SiriusXM has picked him up. Now, I was paying attention to this podcast when it kind of first launched, and within a few episodes, he started getting sponsors on the podcast. And this is extremely concerning for you. If you want your government to not be so easily influenced or a way perhaps for people to receive legal bribes. Because getting sponsors on a podcast, telling you this as somebody who kind of works in this industry, they are potentially paying out thousands of dollars. And I'd hate for our policies here in Kentucky to be directed by who's giving money to the governor's podcast, who's giving him money to go ahead and advertise. Hey, if you want, this regulation to change, if you want something to help you out, something to pass in order to help you out, well, just go ahead, write a little check, 10 grand to the Andy Bashir podcast, 20 grand, who knows how much, 100 grand, shoot for the moon, right? Just write yourself a little check to the podcast advertising. We'll see if we can't take care of that for you. Extremely concerning, obviously, that you have a governor with a podcast. First off, he's already got a job, okay? Is doing the governor job so easy that he's got time for a part-time job as a podcaster? I thought he already had a job. Just me saying. I thought you'd think it'd be a full-time gig, but whatever. Anyway, so he brings on these sponsors, and I did a show about it where I was talking about, at the time, this was months ago, where I was talking at the time about it, and I felt like this was a bigger issue than just even my show could handle. And so whenever, because to be quite honest, I do what I do because I want to see a difference made. As I said, I come up here, drive 3 hours round trip in order to come up here and help spread that kind of information. I do my own shows hours and hours and hours a week in order to get this information out there. And I don't need to be credited with it every time I discover something or bring up a point. I just want to make sure the information gets out there. So I called up some of my contacts I have in the more so legacy media side of things. I said, look, this is a big problem. This is wrong. A governor shouldn't have a podcast that has sponsors paying him money, obviously. And yet, the reporters I talked to at the time were like, yeah, that is an issue. We'll look into it. We'll talk about it, blah, blah, blah. They never said or did anything about it. They never spread that information out there. Why? Because it challenged it. Obviously, the media here in Kentucky is a little more liberal leaning. Now, if for example, the Senate president or the House Speaker had a podcast that they were collecting up sponsors on, paying them potentially tens of thousands of dollars to sponsor, they would start asking some questions about how much are they paying? Who's paying them? What kind of policies are they getting in return for sponsoring those shows? But no, those questions weren't asked. Or importantly, when is this being filmed? Where is this being filmed? Is any taxpayer funds being used in the process of making Andy Bashir's personal podcast? But yet we haven't seen one story about it. We haven't seen one question asked about it. Nothing from the legacy media. Nothing at all. And it's those kinds of issues that need to be addressed. And now we see Sirius XM is going ahead and carrying the show. And his first show is coming up here soon. And it's being filmed in New York at the Sirius XM studios. His first guest on is Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries from the House. Minority Caucus Leader, as in the minority amount of House representatives, not Hakeem Jeffries obviously is a minority, but that's not why he's called a minority leader anyways. So, but that's what he's doing. He's sitting down interviewing him in New York. How's he getting there? Is KSP providing him security on his way there? How much is Sirius XM paying him? Are they paying him? Are they not? How are they helping out his obvious attempt to make the presidential campaign? These are all questions that need to be asked. But when you see these legacy media groups, they're the ones invited into the press conferences. They're the ones invited onto the House floor. In fact, if you go onto House floor, or you go onto the Senate floors here in Kentucky, you'll see desks that say things like Herald Leader, Courier Journal, whatever other news broadcast they are. And they have their own little desks where they get to sit on the floor and take in the information. And that is being filtered through their obvious liberal biases. And I say it's obvious not just in what they write. And simple things like going ahead and I saw some recent stories because obviously this related back to Kentucky due to who the shooter's uncle was, but the Minneapolis school shooting. Making sure to use the correct pronouns for a school shooter. That shows liberal bias. Picking and choosing which stories to cover. That shows liberal bias. Refusing to answer and ask the kinds of questions, but they're getting this access because they're a large enough media organization, you can't ignore them. And it's time we conservatives here in this state had a media organization that can go ahead and access that can get in there, that can say, look, we need to be able to ask some questions directly to this governor, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. We need to be able to have our own press people on the floors of the House and Senate to take in the information, live tweet what's going on, watch what's going on, and do that kind of work. But we can't do that without you. So once again, just showing you right there, that SiriusXM deal, the lack of reporting on that tells us exactly why what we're doing here at Kentucky's Voice is extremely important. I believe in it. You should too. Okay, maybe you've listened to me a while. Maybe this is your first time listening to me. But my wife tells me I'm not a dummy. So that must mean I have something smart about me. I married her, of course. So it makes me somewhat intelligent. And if I see this is worthwhile, you should too. So you can go ahead and text GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can also visit kyvoice.org. That's KY, like, the initials for our state, kyvoice.org. You can give one time. You can give, a couple $100, $1,000 one time, or You can just sign up to give $1 a day. Simple, low amount that can change what's going on here in Kentucky and give us that kind of access. Because there's some other sides of what we see going on here in Kentucky right now that it takes some activism, it takes some action from individuals to dig in and search out these things. I'll give you another example here, and that is filing open records reports. Now, I was digging into this story regarding the battery plant, this recycled battery plant down in Bowling Green. It's by AESC is the name of the company. And what's funny, too, is at the time that it was reported, it's just another example of how much our legacy media here in Kentucky reporting on Kentucky politics completely fails, just fails completely. Bashir puts out, okay, we're giving $110 million to this Japanese company, AESC, to build this battery plant down in Bowling Green. And we'll address about that battery plant and that kind of open records reporting and the amount of effort that goes into getting to the bottom of these stories here in a minute. But what's important about that launch, in the press release that Bashir put out at that time, he said it was a Japanese company. And every single media outlet, because, hey, they're worried about making sure they keep their advertisers. They're worried about making sure they go ahead and keep their corporate interests, keep the people who are paying the piper happy. They just took that at face value. They didn't dig into it. They didn't ask any more questions. They didn't even bother to do a basic Google search. Because anytime I see us giving $110 million to a company, I might actually, Google about what that company is doing. A little bit of investigation, just a little bit. I'm not even being paid to do it. And I will go ahead and dig into it. And what do I find out when I Google AESC? This isn't a Japanese company. We gave $110 million to a Chinese company controlled by the CCP out of your taxpayer pocket. It literally came from the Kentucky taxpayers' savings fund. It came from your taxes that you pay right here in this state. Because you see, China bought out the company a few years before we pinned the deal, and not a single media outlet bothered to catch it. That's why you need to be donating to what we're doing here, because we need to be catching those stories. You can go ahead and text GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's GIVE to 502-571-0970. Pledge just $1 a day. Say, look, I want to give $1 a day. I want to help do this work. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. Before the break, I was digging into why it's so important what we do here at Kentucky's Voice. As you saw there, it is our fall fundraiser season. You can go ahead and help us out by donating, by texting GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's GIVE to 502-571-0970. Visit kyvoice.org. You'd also do that. Pledge $1 a day. Pledge $29 a month, $30 a month, and help us out, help us get this information out there, because digging into some of the things going on in this state, it takes time, it takes effort. It takes the kind of investigative journalism that our legacy media won't do. And part of the reason why it's so hard to dig into the actual stories is because the government will fight you every step of the way. Before the break, I was digging into this AESC battery plant down in Bowling Green, and how at the launch, Bashir had said that this was a Japanese company. That was a lie. It was a Chinese company that we gave $110 million to. But maybe you're somebody who sees no problem with the Kentucky taxpayer out of your pocket. That's right. If you're in Kentucky listening to this show, this came from your pocket, giving a Chinese CCP-controlled company $110 million. You're like, hey, no big deal, but at least it's going to go ahead and create jobs. Well, but then headlines started to drop. This was a few months ago, talking about this company greatly struggling within the states here, struggling to get their operations up and running, struggling to go ahead and deliver the jobs they promise, because the demand for electric vehicles has fallen so sharply. The plant itself was meant to take batteries, recycle them, and I guess sell them to Mercedes for their electric vehicles. But of course, with the demand falling so much for the electric vehicles, it became kind of an issue. And so, therefore, this plant was struggling. And there was headlines, Wall Street Journal, everything else. Now, these headlines didn't come from local media paying attention. No, it took national media to go ahead and grab those. When that was grabbed, what did local media do about it? Did they report on the story? Did they ask any questions about it? Of course not. Of course not. Now, if you manage to talk to some of the people in the area, and I am blessed to be able to have a network across the state and on social media as well. I have a fair amount of state level followers, and I'm able to reach out to all corners of the state. And some people there reached out and let me know what was going on. We've had layoffs in that area. Hundreds of people getting laid off, losing their jobs. People telling me that construction there has slowed to nothing, which begs the question, how and when will we get our $110 million back? Because that has already been given to them in cash. It was a forgivable loan that as long as they hit certain job numbers, they would go ahead and be able to not have to pay back that $110 million out of your pocket. So, like I said, questions need to be asked. And so I sat and I filed what's called an open records request. This is a form you can get from the Kentucky Attorney General's website. And I just filled it out as an individual saying, hey, look, I would like to know about this contract. What are the parameters required? And what kind of reporting have we seen on those parameters? And my first request, they just completely denied. They wouldn't give me anything. So then I contacted a lawyer friend of mine and said, hey, what can I do? This is what they said no to, which was laughable. The lawyer laughed and said, that was a finely wrote open records request. There's something here they're hiding. There's something they don't want you to know about $110 million. For those of you who don't remember the whole Brady Steele thing, we've gotten our money back. I believe that was, 12 million? We're talking about $110 million. Now, you saw the kind of deal the media made about Brady Industries, that steel company, and that $12 million of Kentucky taxpayer fund given to the steel company that never came to be, that maybe dealt with the Russians, maybe didn't. But it was a Republican doing it. Therefore, it deserved all the media's attention. This is the kind of bias I'm talking about. But here you have $110 million, a tenfold problem, $110 million of taxpayer funds being given to a Chinese company with ties to the China Communist Party. And yet, where's our media on it? Completely silent. It falls to us to file those open records reports. And even then, they want to deny them. So I turn to the lawyer. I say, look, help me craft this. So he helps me craft it. We send it over. All they send back was a contract that they originally signed that at least tells us what job numbers they have to hit and when they have to hit it. And then nothing else. And their excuse for nothing else was, well, we did an initial search with the parameters you gave us. And we turned up over 3,300 records. And that's too many records for us to process. Therefore, we're not going to give you that information. We don't owe an explanation to you or to the people of Kentucky to turn over those records to you. It's too much work. Therefore, we spent $110 million. All you get to see is the contract. That's it. So I contact my lawyer friend and say, what do we do? He said, well, go ahead and file an appeal to the Attorney General. So that's what I did. I filed an appeal to the Attorney General. Now, all this process takes time. I mean, the first open records report was like a page long. It took me 10, 20 minutes to write. But their response due to it and how intricate it was, that lawyer took several hours to craft a multi-page response that even had definitions of terms at the top. So that way they couldn't seek to misconstrue anything we had to ask, anything we wanted to see. They couldn't get it wrong, essentially. And what'd they do? Did they give me those records? No, they still were like, no. So then we filed a different open records report, again, recrafted around their complaint and filed an appeal to the Attorney General. On that appeal to the Attorney General was like, well, they do say it's a lot of records, and we have a hard time doing this. This is the other problem. Because you see, when I talk about that $110 million, this is why you may be sitting there thinking like, look, we just have Beshear in office, and here in a few years, Beshear will be gone, and we'll have a Republican governor, most likely. We'll have a completely Republican-controlled state, and these things won't happen anymore. But let me tell you this. One, that $110 million that Beshear pinned a deal with on that Chinese company with, that money to be able to hand out to a company was authorized by our Republican legislature. And our Republican Attorney General also sided with them, not wanting us to get that information. Now, we still are fighting to get that full accounting of exactly what's happened to that $110 million. Can we get our money back? We know it's been paid out. They provided the documents to tell us that $110 million taxpayer funds were paid out. They provide us the documents to say this is when they had to deliver X amount of jobs, but they refuse to tell us how it's going. But all the reporting is saying that they're going out of business. And yet, here in Kentucky, nobody's asking any questions about it. And that entire rigmarole, that entire process takes time, takes money, it takes effort. Now, typically, that's what you'd expect your legacy media, your journalists to be doing. After all, that's the check on democracy, right? What is it? Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. Well, it's dying apparently because they're unwilling to dig into the kinds of stories they should be. Now, when it came to Brady Industries, as I said earlier, they had no problem with it. But that's why we here at Kentucky's Voice, what we're doing to dig into these stories and get to the bottom of it is so incredibly important. And it's about holding everybody accountable, regardless of their party. Because at the end of the day, this is not only coming from our pockets, but it's coming from our futures as well. That is tax funds that have to be raised. You're seeing all around the state, all these tax funds being raised by all these different entities, including school boards. And I got another story for you here about exactly how the kind of citizen journalism we're doing at Kentucky's Voice was able to stop a $35 million tax increase in just 1 year in Lexington. We'll be covering that here in a little bit, but you can text GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text GIVE to 502-571-0970 or visit kyvoice.org and make your pledge today. Just $1 a day goes a long, long way to fighting on the kinds of issues I'm talking about here. We'll be back in a few.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. As you know, if you just listened to that bumper there, or if you've been listening today, we're in the midst of our fall fundraiser, the We the People Fall fundraiser, where we are attempting here to fund the kind of journalism that can deliver real results here in Kentucky by informing the public. So often people wonder, how do we end up with horrible, horrible people in office? Well, it's because there's not enough activism as far as journalism goes on into digging into the kinds of issues that would deliver us a more accountable government here locally. And you can help. You can join into this fight by going ahead and texting GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Make a pledge today. Just $1 a day makes a big difference, I'm telling you. Or you can visit www.kyvoice.org, www.kyvoice.org. And to give you another example on how the kind of work we're doing makes a real effect, we're going to turn towards Lexington for just 1 second. And I know many of you listening live in Louisville. You say, what does this have to do with me? Well, first off, any school district in the state is spending your money. But it's also a perfect example of how the kind of journalism of digging in and investigating that we want to do here at Kentucky's Voice even more can create some real accountability. Okay, so you may have somewhat heard about what's going on in Lexington, but to rewind for you here, the school district in Lexington back in July took a vote to raise the occupational tax, and that is basically our income tax, right? So here in the state, occupational tax is a tax you pay on the payroll. So it's not just if you live in the county. That's why it's not called an income tax. It's that if you work in the county, you have to pay the tax. It's just a little bit of a difference. So they wanted to raise that tax 50% to raise taxes a total of $35 million to fix what they said at the time was about a $16 million budget shortfall. And you say, well, that's a big difference. Why'd they want to raise taxes so much? And also importantly, when you look at their spending, it adjusted for inflation wasn't correlating with their growth in students. It made no sense. And so a group of citizens had, not even in response to that, but knowing that these school districts all around the state were looking at raising taxes, a group of citizens that I'm loosely associated with went ahead and filed a bunch of open records reports for credit card statements dealing with districts all over the state. Now, we were looking for specifically districts that show a little bit more of a proclivity to misspending, and Fayette County Schools was one of those. And as we dig into it, we start finding things like spending $32,000 buying a cup of ice cream for every teacher in the district in Lexington there, or spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on travel in 1 month, spending $127,000 just in 1 month on travel, on flights and hotels and planes, everything else. And we saw this in many school districts. We also dug in to hear what was going on in Jefferson County Public Schools and also found some questionable expenses. But this came about at the same time that they're raising taxes. And the outcry from this and saying, look, you have all this money you're misspending, and yet you're over here trying to raise taxes. Maybe we need to take a beat. We need to wait a second. And that public backlash caused that tax increase to be withdrawn off the table. And they said, look, we're going to go ahead and we're going to revisit this budget issue. We're going to put together a budget work group to try and solve the problem with how are we funding our school. And in doing that, and because that public backlash and them saying, look, we need to raise taxes, and then everybody being like, do you though? Because something isn't adding up here, caused the auditor of the state to go ahead and open up an investigation into it. So they formed this budget work group that was supposedly formed with random people. Not really, but okay. That was formed with random people. And they said, look, we're not afraid of an audit by the state. We got nothing to hide. We're crystal clean. We're clear. We're doing good. We are just amazing. Just amazing. Well, then it comes out after the budget work group looks at things and says, look, the state only mandates that we have a 2%, what's called a 2% contingency fund. Okay, so in the state, schools are required to keep at least a 2% of their budget back contingency fund. And if you fall below that, you now are subject to your finances and your district being taken over by the state. So the state can come in and say, look, we're going to run this thing for a little bit because you can't handle the money. And the reason why it's a 2% requirement is because if you have a completely broken ship sinking that you don't alarm anybody, that you don't know how to fix, and when they board, they have no supplies to fix the ship with. You've used all the glue and the extra wood and all the other things that, tar and things that you use to plug holes and fix a ship. Well, they can't fix it. They have no tools to fix it. And so by making you hold back that 2%, it means we know when you're not doing well financially, that when we come in to fix this ship, there will still be some supplies for the experts to be able to access. Well, Fayette County Public Schools decided on their own as a board to increase that fund to 6% of their budget, not just 2%. And so the budget work group said, well, look, we're staying above the state minimum. You said your budget shortfall's, $16 million or so. Well, we have in this account $30-40 million, and that's including that 6%. If we just drop the contingency percentage to 2%, well, we'll have the millions to cover the budget shortfall, and this can be put in place into the future, and it gives you time to go ahead and look at what you're spending and peel back and say, look, we're not doing well here, okay? But, so they put out that recommendation, and then it comes out magically that $16 million that were thought to be in that contingency fund, $16 million is gone. Poof. Disappeared. Spent on they don't know what. That's right. $16 million is just missing. And what's weird about that contingency fund is that it's required that if the superintendent of the school spends money out of that fund, they have to first receive approval from the school board. So $16 million is missing, and the school board never approved it. So you'd say, obviously, Andrew, that superintendent must be getting fired, right? He's got to be on the chopping block to be removed. That would be at least a little bit of justice. You would be mistaken. Not only is he not being removed, but he just got a $14,000 a year pay raise. Now, we were able to stop that tax increase through open records reports showing us that crazy misspending going on, that then created the public backlash and information campaign. And then the legacy media picked up on it after it was already reported on. So often, I see this on my own social media all the time. I'll discover something by taking time out of my day to dig into these kinds of things. And we want more people doing it. So once again, please help us fund doing that. Help us find the issues going on in every single school district, in every single fiscal court, in every single city council. Help us get eyes on it by texting GIVE, the word GIVE, to 502-571-0970, 502-571-0970, or you can visit kyvoice.org. That's KY like our state, voice.org, and go ahead and make a pledge. $1 a day. Open up that dusty wallet. $1 a day can go a long way to making a huge difference in our ability to get eyes on these things. Because that's what it took to bring this to the light. If we hadn't gotten eyes on that, because if you do the math now you see why they wanted to raise it. $30+ million. Because it wasn't just about shoring up their budget shortfall, but they also had this missing money they needed to replace. That's why it was so much more. They knew this was going on. In fact, it's come out now that we have a whistleblower from the budget office that was suspended filing, saying, hey, look, I was calling out these issues a year ago, saying you're misspending money out of this account. You're not supposed to be. And they ignored me. They blew me off. They actually hid the information I wanted to share from the school board. And so often when we start calling out these things and other issues, the media will see it's catching traction on somebody's social media, and then they'll jump in. Then it becomes a big story. Because before, they could ignore it. It served their purposes. As I said earlier, the person that pays the piper picks the tune. And their payees to their piper, to their flute, their media enterprise, that's not the tune they wanted to hear, but it became so loud through citizens getting involved and calling on it that they would have lost all credibility not to say anything. So they decide to go ahead and say something about it. And now it's blown up to be quite a big issue. We find a deep rot of corruption, a deep rot of misspending, a deep rot of potentially theft. What is going on? $16 million missing. What's funny, too, is the board chair hasn't even given an ultimatum to the superintendent. Tell us where the money went by this amount of time or be fired. Hasn't happened. And yet, this story, all this wouldn't have come about if it wasn't for people getting involved and deciding that if the legacy media isn't going to hold our government accountable, we will do it. And a large part of making sure that continues to happen is ensuring that, once again, we have eyes on everything. So please join our fall fundraiser here by texting GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text GIVE to 502-571-0970. Visit kyvoice.org. Make your pledge. It's $1 a day, which is less than you spend on a cup of coffee, can go a long way to making a huge difference. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And you're back on Kentucky's Voice. As you just heard, it is our wonderful time of the year. Time for a fall fundraiser, right? Time to raise up some money so that way we are prepared. You see, we're coming into our legislative session here in, let's see here, a few months, 3 months, 4 months. And it's the long legislative session, too. They'll have 60 days of passing laws, changing things, and they pass hundreds of bills sometimes in this portion of time. And knowing how that affects you, staying on top of what's going on there, well, that takes time, it takes effort, and that time and effort, unfortunately, costs money. And that's why we have this fall fundraiser going on, because we want to bring the kind of news and information that matters to we the people, the kind of stuff you can make a difference on. So please join us by texting GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's text GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can also check out kyvoice.org. Give a little as $1 a day. Say, hey, look, I want to pledge to give you $29 a month, $30 a month, just because I think that will make a huge difference in helping you accomplish these kinds of goals of watching what's going on. Because there's a difference here too, because, you know, a lot of times you'll tune in to, maybe you watch Fox, maybe you watch CNN for some reason, or MSNBC, and you hate listen to this because, you know, I don't think we have a lot of crossover fans, MSNBC and us. I mean, I don't know a lot of people that, like, you know, my two favorite political people, Rachel Maddow, Andrew Cooper-Ryder. They come right after each other. I don't think there's a lot of crossover. But a lot of times what you're watching there deals with national issues and national concerns. And realistically, you can't make much of a difference on it. It's just a numbers problem, right? So you live in a congressional district. In your average congressional district, there's right around about 750,000 people. In your average, let's say you live in a predominantly Republican because you're a conservative listening to this. So let's say you live in a predominantly Republican congressional district. There's still 50, 60, 70,000 or so people voting in the primaries. It's harder for you to make a difference. But what about when it comes to your local politics? Well, you'd be shocked at how few people are voting, especially in the primaries in those races. I mean, take your state house districts. They have about 45,000 or so people in them. Out of those 45,000 people in the primaries voting in those elections, right now, a lot of these districts only have about 2,000 or so votes cast. I mean, just 2,000. Not like a shocking number. And it's an amount of voters that can really, you can make a difference on. Because so often when they're voting, this is how money runs politics, okay? Follow me here. People begrudge it all the time. You've probably complained about it. I wish money didn't run politics. But what are they really getting with that money? I mean, it's not like a politician gets this money and then comes to your door and hands you like $100 for your vote, $200 for your vote, right? That's not what's happening. What happens is, and how money runs politics is because it's about the information. It's about being able to get out your quote unquote message, being able to sway the voters. And so what happens and how money runs politics is communication is expensive. Getting this information out is expensive. It's hard to do. And so they go ahead and they sell their votes on various things in order to bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars if it's a state level campaign. I mean, we've seen some hotly contested state level campaigns here in the state and a House race to sway 2,000 voters. They're spending $400,000. But what's great about that, and you may be like $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in one state House race to sway 2,000 voters. How will we ever overcome that? Let me tell you, we can. We've done it. Just this past election rotation, we had one race. I believe it's House District 45 in Lexington. You had Killian Timney, no longer in office, running in a primary against a guy who goes by the name of Thomas Jefferson. That's his real name. He goes by TJ. But Thomas Jefferson's his real name. I know that's funny. We can all laugh about it. Ha, 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 ha. But that is his real name, okay? They spent over $500,000 trying to keep Killian Timney in place. This guy, awful. I mean, he voted when the bills were coming up to stop allowance of prescribing puberty blockers and cutting off body parts to children. He went ahead and voted for it. Voted against it, sorry. He wanted the kids to be able to have their body parts chopped off. He wanted parents to be able to pump their kids full of hormones from the opposite sex because some 12-year-old has decided they're a different gender. He was for that. But he was also for the gambling industry. He was also for the school districts. He was also for all these other entities that went ahead and dumped over $500,000 into that campaign. And we were able to beat him with just $50,000 and a different candidate because we had truth on our side and we were able to get out that information. How do we do that statewide? Well, making sure our voters are informed on local issues when they make decisions. That's what's incredibly important. That's what's important, to go ahead and make sure that we are able to get that information into people's heads in a way that the right candidates and people can make that choice and that decision informed. And getting that information out there, as I said, it takes money. That's why we're doing the fall fundraiser. So please make sure you text GIVE, the word GIVE, to 502-571-0970. Find out how you can help. Text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Let's take control of the information going on out here. And if you can't text that because you're like, I don't like texting. I don't want to give out my credit card info over text message. Well, just visit kyvoice.org. That's kyvoice.org. And make a pledge. What we're asking for is simple. It's straightforward. It's less than a cup of coffee a day, $1 a day. Nowadays, cups of coffee is $5-6. And they dilute it down with ice. It doesn't even taste good anymore. It's watered down. Stop spending your money there. Make your coffee at home and instead give it to us here at KY Voice, because we can actually make a difference on what's happening out here. We want better outcomes in our elections. We want people who actually represent us, that care about our concerns. In order to do that, we have to make sure the voters are informed. And informing the voters with digging into those issues. Like I was talking about today, I've talked about AESC's battery plant, $110 million. Nobody wants to dig into that. We do. We want to dig into that Ford battery plant, $350 million. Now they're talking about subleasing out part of it to Nissan. How does that fit into the deal? But once again, that investigating it and visiting these sites and talking to these people takes effort, takes time, takes money. So please text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, give the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Visit www.kyvoice.org. Unless you think I'm doing this for selfish reasons, as I said, I come up here several times a week, driving 3 hours round trip. I'm not paid to be here. I do this because we need to get this information out there. I want to deliver a better state for my son. I don't want him to be taxed to death. I don't want us to continue to have these representatives that do the bidding of corporations and special interest groups and everything else. Instead, they care about what you think about them. And they're not able to overcome it because they're able to bring in enough money from other people, from other sources. So please, please text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Visit www.kyvoice.org. Make your donation today. Make your pledge today. Because I think that this is the next step we need to do in order to ensure that we're not continuing, because likely a Republican governor will most likely go ahead and win in this next election. And following up all these little interesting issues, making sure our local governments have eyes on them, making sure they're held accountable. I mean, you have school districts right now in this state that are using eminent domain to seize people's properties because they decided they want to build a new STEM school or something like that. And the media isn't following up on this at all. We are here. We are. Once again, that's the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can give online at kyvoice.org. Once again, KY, like our state, kyvoice.org. Make your pledge. We're doing this fall fundraiser. We need to be covering the legislature into the spring, really watching everything that they're doing there. Bills fly far and fast. As I mentioned earlier on in the show, the Herald Leader, Courier Journal, all of them have that kind of access there. We need to make sure we're getting it here as well. So, coming up here, we'll continue with our fall fundraiser. Andrew Cooperrider, your host for the day. If you like hearing my voice, I guess, you can check out the Andrew Cooperrider Show right here on WGTK, Sundays at 6 p.m. Once again, that's Sundays at 6 p.m. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, fall fundraiser. Make sure you're jumping in, opening up that wallet. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text our Kentucky's voice.
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. Now, normally you may be expecting to hear Charlie Kirk, and don't worry, he'll be back next week here. Just for this next hour, you're going to have me here representing Kentucky's Voice because it is time for our fall fundraiser. We're a little bit different now. If you don't normally catch the Kentucky Voice show, it comes on the hour before Charlie Kirk and covers Kentucky issues. And while I myself find Charlie Kirk's stylings entertaining, insightful, intelligent, fantastic, what's going on here in our state really matters. And learning more about what exactly the policies you can make a difference on, because so few people will vote in a lot of these elections, and making sure that information gets to them is incredibly important. That's why we're doing our fall fundraiser here, as we build up the kind of media group that can go ahead and take control and watch what's going on within our state. So if you want to give to that kind of thing, you're like, you know what? That makes sense to me. Going ahead and making sure we have a media group that is watching what's going on here in Kentucky, not just nationally. It's so hard to make a difference. I mean, your congressman represents 750,000 people. They're one chunk of all the congressional districts, and that's half of the legislative branch. This is 1/3 of the federal government. It's really hard to make a difference there, but here within the state, making a difference on local policy can be as easy as making sure people are aware of it. They're very responsive to backlash. Look, all politicians care about three things: getting elected, staying elected, getting elected to higher office. And if they see that there's public backlash going on, well, they're going to respond to it. And the way we create that backlash to bad policies is by getting that information out there. But in order to get that done, we got to put together a media group that's investigating, digging into issues. So go ahead and partner with us. If you text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970, once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can go ahead and make a pledge. Maybe you're like, I don't trust phones, Andrew. Phones, I don't trust them. Who am I giving my information to? Well, you can visit the website, kyvoice.org. Once again, that's kyvoice.org, and go ahead and make that donation in to support what we're doing. What we're attempting to do here is grow our influence across the state to make sure that information that we dig into, that we bring you on Kentucky's Voice, can go ahead and hit as many ears as possible. As I said, maybe you're expecting Charlie Kirk. Instead, you got Andrew Cooperrider for the next hour, but that's okay, because you're going to learn a little bit about the state you live in, and you're going to learn about the important stuff that we're doing here at Kentucky's Voice and what we want to continue to do, because we don't want to just deliver a 1 hour a day radio program Monday through Friday like you get when you listen to us from 11 to 12. No, we want to deliver real change, a real difference, and stretch across the state. But we can't do that. Unfortunately, it costs money to do that. That's why we need your assistance. So please make sure you text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can also visit kyvoice.org. Once again, that's kyvoice.org. But on today's show, we're going to be covering a couple of important pieces of information about things going on within the state you're not going to want to miss. You're going to want to hear and learn about what's happening here. What can you make a difference on, and exactly why you should go ahead and donate to Kentucky's Voice. And once again, you text the word GIVE. It's okay. Pull out your phone. Don't do it while you're driving. Text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can also visit www.kyvoice.org Once again, that's kyvoice.org. Join us in our fall fundraiser today. It'll be fantastic to have you a part of the team here, but we'll be back in a few short minutes. This is Andrew Cooperrider.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And you're back on Kentucky's Voice. Your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, standing in here. I know you normally expect to hear Charlie Kirk during this hour, but it is our fall fundraiser at Kentucky's Voice, and we are gung-ho and ready to put together the kind of media group that can really deliver for Kentuckians here in the state, because we got a big problem. And if you want to help us solve it, you can text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. You can visit kyvoice.org. We're asking for one-time donations. And here's the great thing. You can double up your money this segment here. Those of you who've been listening to me for the past hour know I didn't do this. The other segments didn't do this. This is a one-time offer, the kind of deal you can't refuse, okay? We've got a donor willing to match up over the next segment here. We need 4 people to donate $250. $250, that's it. And they'll match it. That's right. $250 can be doubled in its effect up to $500 if you donate in the next 10 minutes. Okay, so crack open that wallet. Now's the time to do it. Hurry up. You can text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. That's right. Text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Visit kyvoice.org. When you text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970, you'll get a link that will take you to the page to go ahead. You can donate by card, by Apple, by Google, by Smoke Signal. We don't care. Just text the word GIVE. Donate $250. We'll be able to match that here for the first 4 people to do that. That's a special thing we're doing just this segment. And it's clear that this is needed in Kentucky. A voice talking for conservatives in Kentucky statewide. Look at it this way, okay? When you listen to the radio, when you watch TV and all those things, right? We have a Senate race going on in this state, an important Senate race, the race to replace McConnell going on. We also have an important congressional race going on in the 6th district. And this is a shame. This is what upsets me the most, is that the big radio, the big TV, the big multimedia debate that comes up during these times, it isn't some conservative group putting together a debate, being asked the kinds of questions that matter to conservatives from these candidates. No. During Republican primaries, what's a big debate that everybody attends? KSR Radio's debate. That's right, KSR Radio Group, and maybe you enjoy listening to Matt Jones and their sports analysis. Maybe you don't. But one thing is true, that none of them are great and strong conservatives. And I remember during this last governor's campaign, they were holding a debate, and I'm listening to the kind of questions being asked, and they were nothing what we conservatives would care about. This is our governor, our state that's coming up. We can't allow these people with obvious, Matt Jones went to run for Senate himself as a Democrat. We can't allow these people to be the ones asking questions to represent Kentuckians. They don't represent our political views. Maybe they have a good sports show, but they don't represent our political views. That's why I need 4 people to text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Donate one time, $250. We'll be able to match that. First 4 people to do that. You can also give online at kyvoice.org. Give online, kyvoice.org. When you text GIVE to 502-571-0970, you'll get a link. You'll be able to go ahead and donate right there and pledge your $250 that then we will have our donor match. And it'll make double the impact. Double the impact. I think that's an important thing to point out, is that the candidates, that's how much a true statewide conservative media group is missing. That's why it's missing, is because what we don't have, we don't have a conservative group asking conservative questions of these candidates. Brian, thank you. Brian just went online. He donated $100. Brian, I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting what we're doing here. We need others to jump in. Join Brian, and that's a double impact. So he donated $100. We match that. Now that's an impact at $200. Kind of deal you can't pass up. So donate at, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. Give online, kyvoice.org. We need to grow this organization to the point. We're here in Louisville on the radio. We're on TV, WBNA 21. We're able to reach out across the state and be able to get on more stations, more TV stations, more radio stations, and demand that instead of crawling on your knees to KSR, which, let's be honest, run by liberals, liberal organization, okay? Instead of our candidates going there and being asked about things that honestly don't even matter in a Republican primary. I mean, I remember some of the questions they were asking to the governor candidates, and it was just like, that doesn't matter. We don't care about that. We need them to be held accountable to the voters that will actually vote for them in the primary. There's no conservative group doing this at all. That's why we need to join people like Brian, donate money, join us in this fight. We want to host that debate. We want to be the ones hosting the debate between our Senate candidates here. We want to be the ones going ahead and hosting those debates for even the 6 congressional districts. Where are they going? Who's going to ask them the hard questions? We just had another anonymous donation for $20 a month. Thank you to who gave that. Thank you so much. It's $20 a month. That is the kind of impact that matters. You can join in on them doing it. Brian, anonymous, thank you, whoever that was. And you can give by texting the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. You can also visit kyvoice.org. Once again, that's kyvoice.org. The other thing that's interesting and different about what we do here is we do interact with you, the followers. Whether that's through social media, you can follow me at KY Cooper Writer. You can follow KY Voice on all social media platforms. We interact. We post what we're doing there, the local things here in Kentucky. So that way, when we have something going on, like, for an example, the Senate races going on, and we're able to say, look at our reach. We're reaching across the state. We're talking to conservatives of all kinds. You need to show up for this debate. You can't shirk it. Because, see, that's the other issue. That's part of the problem, is that if they feel like they can blow you off, they're not going to want to answer the hard questions. If they feel like they're doing you a favor and you try to ask them hard questions, well, they're not going to respond. They won't come out. And there's questions I'm sure you have. So make sure when you're going ahead and giving, you can text 502-571-0970. Text the word GIVE. You can also use that number. As you text the word GIVE, follow up and say, look, if I had the opportunity to ask one of these Senate candidates, because you got Nate Morris, who's obviously running as an anti-McConnell guy. His big thing right now is, I'm not a McConnell boy, I'm a Trump man. You got Andy Barr. He's running as also a pro-Trump guy, but has a little bit different of a voting record. that points to a little more, I guess you call it middle of the road voting record. And you have Daniel Cameron, which we all know ran for governor, has a track record there, was endorsed by Trump, of course, in that governor campaign. Maybe you have a question you would like us to ask them. And so that's the kinds of things that we're able to interact with you on. So text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. And also follow up with that and say, this is the question I would be wanting to ask these Senate candidates. This is what's important to me. Because I've looked at the media coverage on this so far. I've read what they've wrote about. Are you seeing anything where they're asking the kinds of questions you care about? I haven't. I want to know about how you feel. What exactly is your foreign policy? When do we give money to foreign countries? When do we not? Somehow we have all these Senate candidates. Let me ask this. I challenge you this. So we have these 3 Senate candidates running here in Kentucky. Please tell me any of the 3's views on foreign policy. Please tell me any of the 3's views on something like what is the proper role of surveillance within the country itself. Maybe that's something you care about. Can you tell me? No, because nobody's asking them. Because the kinds of people that are right now have the funding to ask those questions and be in that conversation, they're not in touch with you, the conservative voter here in the state. Most of them are registered Democrats. Let's be honest. I mean, next time you open up the Courier-Journal, if you somehow find a copy on the ground, you pick it up. You go to the opinion section. How many truly conservative opinion writers do you see? So text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. We're matching the donations up to $1,000. We're matching it. So give to 502-571-0970. You can also visit kyvoice.org. If you text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970, you'll get a link. You can donate all kinds of different ways. We appreciate it. Appreciate your pledges. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, cutting into Charlie Kirk hour here. Sorry about that. He'll be back next week, I think, the first hour there. But we at Kentucky's Voice, we talk about Kentucky's politics. We're firing up a media machine to challenge frankly, our media has just been completely surrounded by big government liberals, if I do say so myself. And it's obvious when we talk about here the story I'm going to tell you in a second. But before I dig down into it, if you're hearing this story, you're like, why did I know nothing about this? Why was I not informed about this? Well, it's because you need to go ahead and join in helping us spread the word by texting the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, GIVE, to the number 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970, 0970. And you'll get a link. On that link, you'll be able to go ahead and make a pledge, make a donation, help what we're doing out here, make a one-time donation, make a monthly recurring donation, whatever you can do to help. We appreciate it. You can also visit kyvoice.org. Once again, that's kyvoice.org. And I'll tell you a story about the kinds of things that, frankly, you should know more about, but for whatever reason, our media refuses to inform you on. Now, maybe you're aware of the Ford deal going on in E-Town area. And maybe you are aware that's being built, but you don't realize how much money they've been given taxpayer-wise. First, the Biden administration has given that battery plant there $3.5 billion. Ford was given $3.5 billion to build 3 battery plants in the South. 2 of them are built there at that site. Now, what did Ford, though, get from the state? So that's $3.5 billion from the federal government. At the state level, you have given them $350 million plus, but $350 million to also build that plant. Let me explain. So the first thing is that chunk of land that's being built on, that was owned by the state. The state went ahead and bought it and paid off the mortgage on it. I believe that was about $30 million mortgage that was paid off on that property. Additionally, as well, the roads going into that and the repaving and some of the eminent domain that went on to, truthfully, some people said destroy that nice town, but some of the eminent domain and building that went on, that came at the expense of the taxpayers. Also, we went ahead and are using our Kentucky Career and Technical College system to provide free training for their employees that they're bringing on and hiring there, and they've started production and bringing on employees. Obviously, that plant's being unionized. That vote went down, and that's being challenged. We'll see how that turns out. But through all of that, we've given them about $350 million. $250 million of it was straight cash, just a forgivable loan, cash to Ford. So they got $3.5 billion from the federal government, plus another $350 million from you directly out of your pocket. So they got you twice. They dipped into your pocket twice. And what a lot of people don't know is how that vote came about. Let me explain what happened. So the governor goes in and has his economic development cabinet negotiate out this deal. And NDAs were signed. So you weren't allowed to say who this money was going to. Then they pinned this deal, and then they went to the legislature. Now, maybe you remember in 2021 when a special session was called. Here in Kentucky, our legislative sessions run generally from January to Marchish. And after that, they're out of session. They can't do anything unless the governor calls them in to office. And if you're like, look, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that our legislature doesn't pass laws but a few months out of the year. Well, that's what we're trying to help with. We're trying to help people become more informed. And if that's something you just learned, well, I think it's your duty to help us inform more people. So go ahead and text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. 571-0970. You can also give online by visiting kyvoice.org. Once again, kyvoice.org. Go ahead, make your donations. Help us out. Help spread this information. It's important. So if you just learned that, that's your time to give. If at any point I'm talking to you, you're like, I just learned something new, that's your time to give. You should give when that happens. So how was this passed? So they called a special session. Now, they told you it was to deal with COVID. That's what they said. They said, well, look, our hospitals are having problems with staffing. We need more money for COVID response across the board. Of course, the governors deployed National Guard into the hospitals, while at the same time, the hospitals were firing doctors and nurses because they wouldn't take the COVID vaccine, because that made a lot of sense. I know when I'm in an emergency, a health emergency crisis, I too would go ahead and fire doctors and nurses. And they were so committed to the idea of needing to make sure all the doctors and nurses got vaccinated. Many of them had already had COVID. They already had natural immunity. And they're so committed that they need to get vaccinated for COVID that when Georgetown Hospital, the hospital in Georgetown, Kentucky, was advertising, hey, look, we don't mandate vaccines for our people, so you should come work here. Everybody's having a shortage. They decided this was an angle we took. The science is there. Natural immunity is great. It gets the job done. We'll go ahead and say, look, if you don't need that shot to work here. And the Beshear administration wasn't happy about that. And so Dr. Stack, who filled kind of the role of Fauci, but at the state level, called them up and said, hey, you need to stop doing that. You need to stop advertising that. And they stopped. Because the way our state works when it comes to something called certificate of need laws, anytime a hospital wants to add equipment, grow locations, add beds, add services, they have to ask for permission from our state government. And there's a whole entire process to that. And once again, if you just learned something, if you just learned that the Georgetown Hospital was threatened by our governor in 2021 to stop saying that they didn't require the vaccine for their workers, threatened them using the powers of government, or if you just learned about certificate of need, that our hospitals have to ask permission from the government to do simple things like add beds or services, well, that's your cue to give. That's your cue to donate. You can text the word give to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word give to 502-571-0970. You can also give online, kyvoice.org. You'll get that link, take you to it. You'll be able to enter in your info and be able to make a pledge, make a donation. We certainly appreciate your help over here. And as I said, as you're learning things, that's your cue. Like, clearly our media is failing if you didn't hear the story. And I know you didn't hear the Georgetown story because I didn't hear it from any media place. I heard it by talking to legislators within this state that were in the medical field that did work with this hospital. And I was at an event with them. They pulled me to the side. They go, hey, Andrew, I know you got a little bit of a platform. And none of the legacy media cares about this at all. And I thought maybe you would. So let me tell you about what's going on at Georgetown Hospital. See, that's the other cue that we need. What we're really doing here at Kentucky's Voice, we need it to happen. Because you have legislators coming to legacy media with information saying this is a big deal, this is a big problem, and they're not even willing to run it. They're not even willing to follow up on the issues and publish it and dig into these things. But we're here to do that. We want to do that more than we are already, more than just one man can volunteering his time. So please go ahead and text the word give to 502-571-0970. Text the word give 502-571-0970. Or you can visit kyvoice.org. When we come back, though, I talked about that special session being called to give all that money to Ford. All that money to another battery plant, too, as well. I'm going to tell you exactly how that vote took place and how it played out, because it will boil your blood. It was done secretly. We'll have that when we come back in a few short minutes. It's the fall fundraiser here at Kentucky's Voice. Make sure you're texting 502-571-0970. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, cutting into the Charlie Kirk Hour because, well, frankly, we have important work to be accomplished here in the state. And we're doing our fall fundraiser here at Kentucky's Voice. You can text the word GIVE. That's right, GIVE, GIVE, to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970, or visit kyvoice.org. Make your donation. You can make comment too, but make your donation and let us know that you support what we're doing here. Otherwise, what are we doing here if you're not here to support us, right? And so before the break, I was digging into these battery plants. And I think this is important and something to cover because there's a lot of weird things going on with these battery plants across the board. In the first hour of the show, normally we're here from 11 to 12. We do Kentucky's Voice Monday through Friday. So if you normally tune in and hear Charlie Kirk, well, if you tune in just an hour earlier, well, you would get Kentucky's Voice's show, and you might even get me a few times a week, gracing your ears. And if, you're like, I just like that guy. He sounds kind of neato. Well, you can using words like neato. Anyways, you can check out the Andrew Cooper Show Sundays at 6 p.m. right here on 970. Sundays at 6 p.m. That's my once weekly show. Concentrates, of course, on Kentucky politics. So maybe you saw in the national news headline, this from Fox, President Donald Trump has said Sunday that while U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement was right to arrest South Korean immigrants working illegally at a Hyundai battery plant in Georgia, the U.S. should consider letting foreign experts temporarily stay to train Americans in advanced industries. Homeland Security investigations said 475 people, mostly South Korean, were arrested at the under-construction battery plant. We've got a few under-construction battery plants here in Kentucky. I was setting up for exactly how these things came into existence. And that's why, as you learn something today, make sure you text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. If you hear something, you're like, I didn't know that. I am just now learning that. That's your cue. Donate. kyvoice.org. Give money. Help us get this information out there. It's important. So how did these plants come to be? So I talked about the Ford battery plant receiving $3.5 billion, plus they got $250 million cash, plus all these other goodies from the state. And also a battery plant down in Bowling Green that is of some concern that's not owned by the Japanese, as Bashir likes to peddle, but instead AESC, which was a company founded in Japan, but then was bought out by China in 2019. Despite that, in 2021, when Bashir announced their battery plant in Bowling Green, he called it a Japanese company, even though it's majority owned by the Communist Party out of China. But whatever, we only gave them $110 million of your money, but we'll go into that. So how did this happen? Well, they called this special session in late 2021. They say it's about COVID, but really it was about this Ford battery plant deal. And also this other deal. They didn't really disclose the other deal even to the legislators, but they did disclose the Ford battery plant deal to a few legislators. And this also goes into how our media apparatus works, how our political system works, and how we can make a difference here at Kentucky's Voice. So make sure, as always, you're donating. Text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. So they call this special session. And only about 4 or 5 of the legislators in our each House and Senate were read in. So they had to sign NDAs, and they knew exactly what they were signing up for. And they were signing up for Ford battery plants. However, this bill to go ahead and give out this kind of money, spend almost $500 million total of Kentucky taxpayer funds on battery plants, was voted on and approved by basically every single legislator. I think across the Senate and the House, there's only about 15 no votes across the Kentucky Senate and House. Out of 138 legislators, only 15 of them voted no. But here's the thing. They didn't know what they were voting on. That's right. All of those legislators, when they voted to spend almost $500 million, were told they couldn't know what it was. They're supposed to be representing us. They can't do that when they don't know what they're voting on, but because of NDAs and secrecy, they were just told by the leadership in the House and Senate, look, this is a good deal, vote yes on it. This is a good deal, vote, yeah, you just vote yes, you'll be okay. In fact, one legislator that I'm friends with, he let me know about how that went. And the legislators got pulled in one by one and told, look, here's the deal. It's a really great deal. We promise the project's really great. It's going to be the next Toyota. They always promise every single deal is the next Toyota. They say, listen, you can trust us when we say this is a great deal. Now, obviously, battery plants, regardless of the name on them, whether it's Hyundai, who just had a bunch of illegal immigrants arrested, or whether it was a Ford, or whether it's AESC, which is a well-known brand name that I'm sure we all trust, AESC battery plants. They're truly a titan and well-known companies that all of us trust. But anyways, regardless of those companies and who it is, battery plants as a whole are essentially a startup. Electric vehicles are still, for most people, in startup phase. Sure, Tesla does well, but the demand's so lagging, the market isn't tested. How many people can it actually handle? These are all questions that we're left asking. These companies are startups. We shouldn't be dumping $500 million of taxpayer funds into startups, but that's what we did secretly. And none of the legislators, other than about 10, knew who and what they were funding when they voted to give just under $500 million of your money out. They were told, trust me, bro, by leadership in the House and Senate. Trust me, bro. And if you just learn something, once again, that's your call. Your call to give. Text the word give 502-571-0970. Text the word give 502-571-0970. Now, where this gets even kind of funnier is the way the bill was wrote. It said that any company investing X amount into these projects is eligible to receive this money. It didn't specify which company because, of course, the bill itself is public and they wanted to keep secret from us and from the legislators and from everybody what exactly they're approving. So they go ahead and they take this vote and they approve this Ford battery plant without knowing what they were doing, but that's what they were told about. But see, Beshear didn't spend all the money on that battery plant. No. He took $110 million of that and gave it to the Chinese Communist Party company, AESC, that is building a battery plant in Bowling Green. That battery plant has hit issues, had layoffs. I don't believe they're in production yet. The building, I'm told by people in the area, remains largely empty. Yet it mum's the word on this in the regular media, isn't it, here in Kentucky? They won't tell you anything about that. Weird, right? It's almost like they're being paid by the green agenda to not tell you about what's really going on. Hey, that's why you should donate here at Kentucky's Voice. Text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. 502-571-0970. kyvoice.org. It's our important, always important fall fundraiser because we're trying to keep eyes on the legislature and watch exactly what they're doing. Here's the other rub that has gotten zero follow-up at all by anybody in the legacy media. You see, the person that was penning this deal with the Ford battery plant in the Beshear administration, well, as it turns out, he owns commercial property right by that plant. He has an industrial storage facilities right by that location. Seems like a conflict of interest, doesn't it? Seems like he might make money off of making sure these hundreds of millions of dollars end up in the hands of people that are going to build in the area because it boosts his own property value. It boosts his own ability to do business. This is a member of the Beshear administration. Unless you just take my word for it that it's unethical, the executive branch ethics board also said he really shouldn't be involved in this conversation. He has too much of a financial interest into this battery plant going forward. And yet, despite that, he remained involved. And despite that, you do not hear any media telling you this. They're not following up on this kind of corruption at all. This is out in the open corruption that we can see just by turning a little bit of an eye to say, hey, look, what's going on here that seems a bit corrupt. And like I said, you see this national news story about Hyundai, and that's because these battery plants have all kinds of issues built into them. But that's not the only kind of open corruption that our legacy media here in the state refuses to look at. No. I'm going to tell you about another open corruption going on that we seem to fall short of. But in order to bring you that, you got to tune back in here in just a few minutes. But before I do that, if you're learning something, entertained, you're saying, look, we need more of this information out there, make sure you go ahead, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. You can also visit kyvoice.org. When we come back, we'll talk about another amount of seemingly open corruption going on within the Beshear administration. We'll have that coming back here in a few short minutes. Host for the day, Andrew Cooper-Ryder. If you like what you're hearing, you like my voice, well, you can tune into it right here on 970, Sundays at 6 p.m. You can also watch it on WBNA 21, Wednesdays at 11. But we'll be back in a few short minutes. You're going to want to stay tuned.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
What time am I on? That's what you told me last time.
to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
The We the People Fall fundraiser is going on now. Learn how you can partner with us this week live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Together, we will stand for faith, family, freedom, and the Kentucky way. Do not miss it.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We're cutting into the Charlie Kirk Hour here just because we're doing this fall fundraiser. And we want to make sure we introduce you to Kentucky's Voice. Show's been going on for a little bit here. It comes on between 11 and 12, and it covers Kentucky-specific topics. And it tries to cover the kind of news you're not going to hear everywhere else, because there are some issues going on within our state that for one reason or another, our legacy media seems to not want to go ahead and cover. And so if you want to help us, if you want to support what we're doing, feel free to go ahead and text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Because we want to be digging into these things. We want to be making sure that we dig in and watch exactly what's going on, because there is all kinds of open corruption going on. And I'm going to tell you about that. So as I tell this to you, if you find yourself getting upset, if you find yourself saying, look, why isn't something being done about this? It's because the media refuses to cover it. So once again, that's 502-571-0970. 502-571-0970. Text the word GIVE. You can also go to kyvoice.org. So I mentioned there's another member of Beshear's cabinet. You know, he's doing all these economic development things. You see him at every single ribbon cutting and you know, shoveling of dirt and everything else. It's funny when these things fail. I'm thinking of, for example, like App Harvest. Beshear was happy to stand up there, and App Harvest opened up their greenhouse there in, what is it, Moorhead area or whatever, to grow tomatoes. Of course, App Harvest failed, went belly up. But Beshear stood up there and said, it's going to be the next Toyota. That's, once again, their favorite line. It's going to be the next Toyota. It's going to be changing. It's going to be life-altering for Kentuckians. And if by life-altering they meant that in App Harvest's case, they took, $55 million loan from USDA about 6 months before they went bankrupt. $55 million, taxpayer funds, 6 months before they went bankrupt. But it isn't just that Beshear himself appears to be corrupt. When you see all this money flowing in and stuff, it's that he actually will brag about his corruption. He made this post. This was funny. This is back in 2024. He made this post thanking Gray Construction for the work that on projects like SK and Ford battery plant. That's it. Ford battery plant we're talking about there down in Glendale that I covered in last segment that we, set aside $410 million for, gave him $250 million cash. Well, he took a moment on his social media there to go ahead and thank Jim Gray for his work in building it. Here's the weird thing about Jim Gray. Jim Gray is also Beshear's, Secretary of Transportation. So there you go. He's openly bragging. This Beshear posted that on his social media, openly bragging about how his Secretary of Transportation's company is building all these projects that you, the taxpayer, are funding. This is the way it works. This is the way the grift works. Let's not mention Jim Gray's a big donor to the Beshear administration too. So he makes this post. This is the way the grift works. They give the money to the company to build in Kentucky. And then that company turns around and hires literally the governor's transportation secretary. Just openly. They're not even hiding it. Testament to how horrible the media is doing here in Kentucky. So they go ahead and hire them to build the place, pay them, millions of dollars. And it just so happens that those people are giant donors to Beshear's campaign and a part of the Beshear administration. It's just shocking. This is shocking stuff. I'm not shocked by it. I guess what's more shocking to me is how blatantly our media refuses to cover it. That's why we're trying to make a difference here at Kentucky's Voice. You can partner with us by texting the word GIVE. That's the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Pull out the wallet, dust it off. Maybe you haven't opened it in a while. Maybe you just opened it for spending $20 on a cup of Frappuccino or something crazy. Not something making a difference in the state. And you can go ahead and say, look, I'll give you guys some money to help you out because this is important. I do want people to say it. How can the governor sit there and openly post about his transportation secretary building and building a lot? We'll go over the numbers here in a second. And nobody calls him out on it. Nobody asks any questions. In the first hour of this 2-hour special we're doing here, I talked about how Beshear openly posts about his podcasting he's doing and how he just got picked up by SiriusXM and how he had podcast sponsors paying him money. And nobody in the legacy media here in the state would want to ask him any questions about how much they're paying, who's paying for it, are the taxpayers paying for it? Because they refuse to have those conversations. So text the word GIVE, 502-571-0970. And how much has Gray profited from this? Well, let's just go over the numbers, right? So when you look at the builders here, you find Gray Construction many times. Jim Gray, he's the chair of Gray Construction. Jim Gray is also Kentucky's transportation secretary, position appointed by Beshear. So how much has he profited? Well, according to ENR Midwest, Gray Construction did $172 million in revenue in 2019. That is the earning year before Beshear has taken office. Now, according to their own website there, according to ENR Midwest, in 2023, Gray Construction did $1 billion in revenue. In just 4 years, they went from doing $172 million to $1 billion in revenue. What was the change? What was the difference? Well, the only thing I'm seeing right here is Gray getting appointed as Secretary of the Secretary of Transportation. Gray getting appointed, giving out, shelling out some big bucks there to Beshear. Magically, his company goes from doing $172 million to $1 billion. And Beshear brags about it online. And nobody says mum about it. Nothing. Mum's a word. We're not going to ask any questions. Not going to be like, hey, do you find it like, I don't know, a little strange, maybe a little corrupt? Maybe there might be some problems with the fact that your transportation secretary's company is the one doing all the construction on these projects that you're turning around and taking hundreds of millions of dollars out of the Kentucky taxpayers' pocket to go ahead and do. Maybe that might be part of the problem. But no, instead, they're too busy following him as he runs for president. And here's why. Here's part of the reason why, too. This is the way the legacy media works, why they're so concerned about not making Beshear look bad. You see, not only is Beshear running for president and running a competitive campaign, a great opportunity for Beshear. Now, will he win presidency? Probably not. It looks there's some other bigger names are probably better well known. I think he has too big of a lift to do to get his name known. I think what Beshear's actually hoping for is he can fundraise enough money and spend enough money that he can go ahead and be considered for a cabinet position amongst, if a Democrat does win the presidency, he can then be considered for a cabinet position. That's kind of like the consolation prize. I mean, he might be thinking, look, I hope to win president, but shoot for the stars, and if you miss, you land in the moon, or what? I don't know what the saying, whatever the saying is. And his moon is a cabinet position. But anyways, so they're not asking any questions about that, because if he's running that campaign and if he's elevated to that position, a lot of these media groups, take for an example the Courier-Journal, I believe they're a part of the same media group as USA Today. So while you may think of them as like a local paper, they're not really. They're part of the USA Today platform. And so when Beshear goes to run for president, of course, the media gaggle follows around these presidential candidates and collects up the news and stories and all that other stuff. And what a lot of times these groups do is they reach down into the state and find a reporter that's really familiar with this individual. And so all of them are hoping for their own big breaks. If Beshear becomes president, they might get a chance to get called up to the big leagues to get caught up to the national media, get caught up to national politics, get a chance to be able to lend their voice there amongst the greats. Like, Walter Cronkite and Rachel Maddow, very close together people. I know a similar quality. I put them in the greats. They should be in the Reporters Hall of Fame there. Rachel Maddow, I'm sure she'll do that. She should be well known for establishing the Karen haircut. She definitely has a Karen haircut. Should be well known for establishing that. Of course, we saw that Phillies game. She had that quintessential Phillies haircut. But anyways, so the media just hopes to go ahead and be called up to the big leagues. So they're going to refuse to report on those important topics, those important issues. But that's what we're doing here at Kentucky's Voice. We're building out this media group that, one, as I said earlier, can actually host the kinds of debates and play party to the kinds of issues. So we're not relying on liberal media groups like KSR to suddenly put on our political debates. That's right, they do that, and they do Republican primary debates, even though none of them are Republicans. So we're not relying on them to get out the news. We're not relying on USA Today affiliates to somehow inform you on what's going on in the state. We're not relying on these media groups that are just hoping for their chance at the big leagues. No, instead, we have actual conservatives that live actually in your state, actually delivering the kind of information that is important to you so you can actually learn something about these local races and statewide races that the national media won't dig into and won't cover the same way we will. And become, not only does our electorate get smarter, we get better elected people from that. We get better outcomes of policy. It really makes a difference into the future of the state. And so if you want to be a part of that, text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Once again, text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, GIVE, to 502-571-0970. You can also give online at kyvoice.org. Look, give one time, give $20, $100, $1,000, give one time, or give monthly. Give $20 monthly. Makes a huge difference, and it helps us grow this out so we're not so reliant on it. So that's text the word GIVE to 502-571-0970. Give online, kyvoice.org. I'm Andrew Cooperrider, been your host for the day. You can tune into the Andrew Cooperrider Show. That's a little different from the Kentucky Voice Show that happens every day from 11 to 12. The Andrew Cooperrider Show comes on Sundays at 6 p.m. and on WBNA at 11. Thank you guys so much. Until tomorrow, we'll be seeing you.